who is guarding the guards when billions in taxpayer funds just disappear into luxury cars and drug pipelines, and political leaders seem to be actively cheering on the chaos?
That question really it cuts right to the heart of what we're digging into today.
It does.
It forces us to look at this startling paradox. Minnesota, a state that's often praised for its Minnesota nice culture, its civic infrastructure, is somehow the epicenter of a massive accountability crisis right now.
And we've taken a deep dive into the source material on this, and the picture that emerges is it's one of staggering fraud, but it's also coupled with this unprecedented political conflict with federal law enforcement.
Exactly.
So our mission today is to really connect these dots: the theft of welfare funds, the financing of international narcotics, and the aggressive rhetoric from politicians that seems designed to obstruct justice.
And the numbers alone should make you stop and think. We're talking about schemes that exploited public compassion, especially during the pandemic.
Right.
The FBI director, Kash Patel, he made it very clear. He said the huge prosecutions they've mounted so far are only, and this is a direct quote, the tip of the iceberg.
The tip of the iceberg, which suggests what? The final tally could be in the billions?
It could be. The fraud problem in Minnesota could easily be in the billions of dollars.
Let's put a face to that. Amy Bach, the mastermind behind Feeding Our Future. She's now been ordered to forfeit, what, $5.2 million in assets?
That's right. And those assets were stolen welfare funds. We're talking about a 2013 Porsche, a whole collection of designer handbags.
So children's meals were literally exchanged for luxury accessories. It's morally shocking.
But it goes so much deeper than local embezzlement. The investigation has now widened to include a Somali couple, Yusuf Nur Ahmed and Ayan Farara Ismail.
And they were celebrated as community leaders, right?
Initially, yes.
Yeah.
But they allegedly ran a network that saw nearly $8 billion in charitable funds just vanish.
$8 billion.
And this is the chilling part. This so-called charity was allegedly used as a covert channel to finance the production of about 1.1 tons of narcotics.
Heroin and fentanyl.
Sourced directly from China. It's global organized crime, but it's built on a foundation of public trust and taxpayer money.
That level of theft, it obviously demanded a huge federal response. Operation Metro Surge. 2,000 federal agents.
Right. But that federal push was met with this immediate aggressive resistance from state leaders. And that conflict, that public fight, peaked tragically with the fatal ICE shooting of Renee Good.
So the theme here, what we're really looking at, is how lax oversight allowed the theft in the first place, and then how political obstruction seemed to fight the cleanup. We need to understand not just what happened, but how the whole political climate made this breakdown possible.
Let's start with the money. How these massive fraud schemes actually worked. They were successful because the systems designed to protect the funds were, well, they were deliberately weakened.
The Feeding Our Future scandal is a perfect example of that, isn't it? It shows how greed just capitalized on the COVID crisis.
It's the blueprint. Amy Bach was found guilty on every single count. Wire fraud, conspiracy, bribery. Her network fraudulently claimed they served up to 91 million meals.
Well, 91 million.
Which netted them somewhere between $250 and $400 million in false federal claims.
What's so fascinating here is the environment that allowed it. It wasn't some genius plan. It was simple exploitation, right?
Absolutely. The fraud exploded because of emergency rule changes during the pandemic. They temporarily removed the normal verification requirements for meal sites.
So the government basically traded oversight for speed?
And the fraudsters saw an open vault. And when state oversight finally did start to catch on and, tried to turn off the money spigot,
what happened?
Bach's organization had the audacity to sue the state, claiming racial discrimination.
So they weaponized the sensitive issue to keep the fraudulent funds flowing.
It's a calculated strategy. It forced the money to keep coming while they fought legitimate scrutiny in court. Yeah. It speaks volumes about the culture of impunity they thought they had.
Okay, so if Feeding Our Future was a sophisticated smash and grab, this alleged $8 billion charity to narco pipeline is something else entirely. It sounds like an international financial engineering marvel.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
We're talking about Yusuf Nur Ahmed and Ayan Farah Ismail, who, on paper, were humanitarians.
The numbers you mentioned before they're almost impossible to comprehend.
They are. Investigators flagged their personal asset growth at an astonishing 3,600%.
Now how long?
In just 12 months. Nearly $8 billion in funds, earmarked for aid, for housing, It just vanished. It was no longer traceable.
To put that in perspective for you, $8 billion is larger than the entire annual GDP of several small countries. It's its own economy.
And what did this stolen wealth finance? The investigation showed it was used as a laundering channel for 1.1 tons of heroin and fentanyl.
So this isn't just theft. It's not just about stealing money. This is providing the critical financial backbone for international drug trafficking that poisons our own communities.
And the sophistication of the money movement is it's fascinating. Investigators found $412 million cycling through intermediary accounts in less than 72 hours.
Less than 3 days.
The speed and the segmentation. It tells us this network was highly professional. The whole system was explicitly designed to break transfers into smaller chunks.
To stay below the reporting thresholds, right, so banks and regulators wouldn't see it.
Exactly. It was designed to be impossible to catch in real time if you were just relying on standard reporting.
It was an empire built on public trust and, frankly, minimal oversight. They had the appearance of legitimacy, but their personal holdings grew to over $2.3 billion.
Including a waterfront estate appraised at $86 million.
They took tax dollars and donations meant for the neediest people and used it to bankroll staggering personal excess and global crime. The fact that this operated right under the noses of state regulators, it's a profound failure of governance.
And the uncontrolled spread of schemes like these ultimately forced the federal government to intervene, and to intervene dramatically. This is where the crisis shifts from, purely financial to political.
Which brings us to Operation Metro Surge. I mean, when you have networks financing international narcotics with tax dollars, and you also have federal officials already looking into, $700 million in U.S. cash being shipped in luggage from Minneapolis to Somalia?
Right. That context is crucial.
The federal response has to be aggressive. That massive, uncontrolled financial outflow is why 2,000 federal agents were deployed to Minnesota.
Exactly. The sheer scale of it demanded a law enforcement presence that Minnesota just wasn't used to. And that operation led directly to that tragic confrontation between ICE agent Jonathan Ross and Renee Good.
DHS officials were very quick to defend Agent Ross. They said he acted in self-defense after Good was allegedly, quote, stalking and impeding ICE.
And attempting to, quote, run him over with her car. DHS went so far as to label her action an act of domestic terrorism.
The agent's background is also pretty relevant here, isn't it?
I think so. Ross was a highly trained firearms instructor, a SWAT member. And critically, he'd been seriously injured just 6 months before this incident.
Oh.
He was dragged 50 yards by a vehicle during a traffic stop. So you can imagine that history would explain why he might perceive a car moving toward him as a lethal threat that justifies self-defense.
But the political reaction from local leaders was explosive and, frankly, pretty dangerous. Mayor Jacob Frey publicly told IC to get the F out of Minneapolis.
And Governor Tim Walz was talking about preparing the National Guard against a rogue federal agent.
It's a political rhetoric crisis.
It is.
Yeah.
Instead of urging calm and letting an investigation happen, these officials, they inflame the situation. Critics accuse them of encouraging political vigilantism.
It's like they were painting federal agents who were there to crack down on massive fraud and crime as the enemy.
And that deliberate antagonism, it just creates a climate that's hostile to any kind of accountability, hostile to the rule of law.
It's a stunning example of obstruction. And the fallout didn't just stop in Minneapolis. It went right inside the Department of Justice itself.
Right. And the internal conflict that followed inside the DOJ is fascinating. The DOJ's Civil Rights Division, they made a decision not to investigate Agent Ross for any constitutional violations.
Okay. But what did they do instead?
Federal investigators did focus on the victim's possible ties to activist groups.
So the shooter isn't investigated, but the deceased's affiliations are. That prioritization, that seems.
It sparked a massive internal revolt. The result was a mass exodus. 6 federal prosecutors in Minnesota, plus several leaders in the Civil Rights Division, all resigned.
They resigned over this.
They did. They publicly cited the department's priorities and its reluctance to investigate the shooting. It suggests a willingness, even within parts of the federal government, to sacrifice transparency to protect a certain narrative.
This crisis, it's not just about these huge billion-dollar international networks and federal conflicts. It feels systemic.
It is systemic. The same lax oversight that allowed $8 billion to vanish is exactly what allows local petty corruption to take root and just flourish.
So let's turn to the case of Mayor Chris Swanson in Two Harbors. This local example is so important because it shows the failure of ethical standards runs all the way down to the municipal level. It's a culture, not just one or two bad actors.
Right. The city attorney investigated Mayor Swanson and concluded that he repeatedly violated city code and policy, specifically by using his public office for private financial gain.
And this wasn't subtle stuff.
Not at all. The evidence came from the mayor's own city attorney. We're talking about him using his official title, Two Harbors Mayor Chris Swanson, to promote his private investment opportunities.
The Vibrant Two Harbors thing, right? Where he was soliciting funds for high-yield ventures.
Yes, and here's where the ethical boundaries completely dissolve. He was using the official city email system to solicit those funds. And then his private business, Life Garage, LLC, was billing the city for that same fundraising work.
Wait, he was billing the city?
At $65 per hour, he was acting as a public servant and a private contractor doing private business, all on the taxpayer's clock.
That's the ultimate blurring of the lines. His private ventures were so tangled up with city matters that nobody could tell if he was acting for the city's benefit or his own.
And the city council's reaction confirms just how serious it was. They voted unanimously, 6-0, to ask for his resignation.
That case really highlights a major gap, doesn't it? The lack of fundamental accountability tools.
It does. The failure to require elected officials to file mandatory economic interest disclosure statements. It just leaves the door wide open for these kinds of conflicts to spread all across local government.
So the lesson from Mayor Swanson is that the same weak oversight that allowed this small, local corruption to thrive in Two Harbors, those are the exact same reasons why organizations like Feeding Our Future could operate with impunity.
Which then paved the way for the $8 billion narco pipeline. It's a systemic culture of neglect.
So what we've seen in this deep dive is a state grappling with a triple failure. A failure of financial oversight that let colossal theft happen, a failure of political leadership that actively obstructed law enforcement, and a failure of ethical rigor at really every level of government.
And the taxpayers and the most vulnerable are the ones left footing the bill for all this chaos.
If you're trying to make sense of this, you have to realize the corruption wasn't just financial. That breakdown of trust led directly to the political chaos we saw on the streets. The cost isn't just measured in the millions Amy Bach spent on luxury goods.
No, it's measured in the integrity of public service itself. When taxpayer billions are stolen under the nose of minimal oversight, and political leaders start equating law enforcement with terrorism while encouraging defiance, the damage to public trust is profound.
So who will ultimately hold the most reckless elected officials accountable for creating this climate of chaos? And without that accountability, how can the integrity of public trust ever really be restored? That is the huge unanswered question facing Minnesota right now.